What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is obviously part of a series where I focus on a specific director and rank that director's work from worst to best. Done such directors in the past, so Spike Lee, Spike Jonze, Wes Anderson, Paul Thomas Anderson, the list goes on. You guys can check that out my director playlist down below. But guys, you clicked on this video, so you know it. This time around, I'm focusing on Matt Reeves films and ranking them from worst to best. Now, I'm filming this video June 30th of 2022, and as of said date, Matt Reeves has done 6 feature-length films. So I'll be ranking them from 6 being his worst to 1 being his best, and of course, my opinion. Now, keep in mind, if you're new to the channel, this will not include any music videos, short films, video games, TV shows, none of that, just specifically feature-length films. So all that exposition aside, guys, let's get started. So kick things off with number 6, we have The Pallbearer, which is the movie, the last one of his that I had to watch before I could say that, hey, I have seen all of his movies. And for good reason. The Pallbearer, when you watch it, you would not think that it is a Matt Reeves movie. In fact, it feels like a very, very paint-by-number kind of director did this movie, not Matt Reeves. It's very cliche, definitely riffing on The Graduate. The Graduate obviously is like a billion times better, but The Pallbearer, it has its audience, but for me personally watching it, I can't lie, it was like a chore. And the movie isn't even that long. I believe it's under 2 hours, but it felt like a chore watching it, and I did not like it. And that's why it's my number 6. Next up, number 5, we have Cloverfield. Cloverfield is a film that's similar enough. It has its style. I will say that. It does have that over Pallbearer, but similar to the Pallbearer, it definitely has an audience. But Cloverfield, for me, isn't really my cup of tea. I can appreciate shaky cam work for sure. I like the Bourne trilogy. But here, Cloverfield, I can't lie, when I saw it the first time, it actually made me nauseate to the point of where I threw up. Not gonna lie. And I did watch it a second time, and I didn't throw up, but it still made me nauseated. And I just couldn't really get past that. Maybe third time's a charm. Maybe I'll rewatch it again and I'll like it more. But I just never really could get into this movie. Again, I know there's an audience out there. Just for me personally watching it, wasn't a big fan of it. And yeah, that's why it's my number 5. Next up, at number 4, we have Let Me In, which is a remake. And right off the bat, I did not see the original, unfortunately. But I will say, Let Me In, it's a rock solid movie. I did watch it a second time a couple of years ago, and I didn't like it quite as much as I did the first time. But I will say, nonetheless, this is a really well-crafted movie. Great performances, really good atmosphere, and the cinematography I quite liked. It's drenched in shadows and dark lighting. I quite liked it. Maybe I'll watch the original, but as it stands, I mean, Let Me In, Matt Reeves did a pretty good job directing this movie, and that is why it's my number 4. Next up, my number 3 is War for the Planet of the Apes, which is the final entry in the Matt Reeves series, although, truth be told, he did not direct the first one, but he did do the second and third. And with this third entry, I saw it in theaters and I quite liked it, but I've never had the urge to revisit it. Nothing against the movie. I just think that it might have been a one-and-done type of deal. I don't know. Maybe I'll revisit it down the line, but it's one of those movies where it's well crafted. I remember really being invested in the movie. I liked Caesar's journey. I liked the visual effects. I thought for at the time that the score was kind of forgettable, but more on that later on with the composer Michael Giacchino. We'll get to that later on, but I just found some elements to be lacking. Like, score is really important to me. Like, if you're going to have a film score, make it memorable or make it something that I can, really kind of notice. But this movie didn't have that, in my opinion. And at the same time, I just thought the pacing was kind of slack. But nonetheless, still a really well-crafted film. Like, if you watch my review back 5 years ago, I praised it a lot, and I still do. It's just rewatchability value just really isn't there for me. And that is something I do take into account when ranking and watching movies just in general, in terms of also buying movies. But yeah, that was my number 3. Sorry, it was long-winded. Next up, my number 2 is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which is the second entry in the Matt Reeves series. This one I like a bit more. This one I actually have seen twice. I saw it once in theaters and then a second time in preparation for War for the Planet of the Apes. The second time I watched it with my fiance, and she really liked it, and I liked it too, but it was pretty much the same thing, where I thought that it was really well directed, really good acting. I love also the visual effects. The motion capture work is stunning. But the score I found to be pretty forgettable and the pacing kind of slack. But it wasn't as bad as War for the Planet of the Apes. And by bad, I mean that, like, neither movie are bad in these categories. It was just something that, like, I kind of noticed and it kind of took me out a little bit. But nonetheless, I still really liked Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. That's why it's my number 2. But rewatchability value, similarly enough, again, I haven't seen this movie in 5 years, just because I haven't felt the urge to. So, yeah, that's why it's my number 2. Next up, my number one, you guys probably already guessed it, but my number one is The Batman. So The Batman I saw in theaters, and I really liked it. And I gotta say, the reason why I mentioned with War for Planet of the Apes, Michael Giacchino's score, which I know I'm butchering his name, and I apologize. The reason why I mentioned that is because he did the score for Dawn and War for Planet of the Apes. And he's one of those composers, hot take, I'm not really a big fan of his scores. I think that they're very forgettable. But I did retract that when I saw The Batman, because when I watched The Batman, the score I loved. It was not only really noticeable, it was memorable and really fitting to the imagery on screen. And at the same time, this movie is almost 3 hours, but it's very, very immersive. And I feel like the rewatchability value is going to be there for sure. Sure, it's riffing on Seven, and sure, Seven's a billion times better, but still, The Batman is still a really good film, and I definitely think it's Matt Reeves' best film, and of course, my opinion. But yeah, I will be curious to hear your guys' ranking on Matt Reeves' films down below. Let me know. And what I try to do is I try to talk about the director's, style in terms of if I like it or not at the end of, these director ranking videos. So sometimes I forget. I'm human. I apologize. But I remember this time. So with Matt Reeves, I think he's a rock solid director, similar enough to Scott Derrickson. He's a studio director that studios give him, movies like a bunch of different genres, and he's able to work within them as well as able to work within the studio system. And it's very much so admirable because when you watch Matt Reeves, you definitely can feel his style. He has a very somber look to his movies, but also tonally wise. It's like when you watch his movies, that tone, you definitely feel the bleakness of it. And I like that. I think that he's a really good director in those regards. Not one of my favorites by any means, but he is a rock solid director, and I greatly admire him. And I am glad that he's going to be continuing making movies. Don't know what his next movie is. I think it might be The Batman 2. We'll see. But yeah. Anyways, guys, let me know your ranking of Matt Reeves' films down below. And as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me on Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.